Bingo. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. We are continuing our Shabbat reading of Scripture. We are in Genesis chapter 22. Genesis 22. Here we go. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. He said, Here I am. He said, Now take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go into the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell you of. I think I find it very interesting. I'm not sure if this is the first time he considers Isaac your only son. That's where Yahuwah is saying this. Yeah, I think this is the first time that phrase, your only son. Now, we know literally that wasn't his only son, but I guess as far as covenant is concerned, right? The covenant that Yahuwah made with Abraham wasn't for him, Hagar, and Ishmael. It
What
was for
verse was that?
verse number 2.
I don't have only son.
You don't have that?
No, it's Septuagint. No.
All right, let me look at a different translation. ISR says, take your son now, your only son. Yep, I have it in the ISR.
It says, take thy son, the beloved one.
Yeah, Masoretic has thine only. Let's see. Interlinear said, take now thy son, thine only. Yechidecha.
But
Yechideka.
the Septuagint says the beloved one. So I mean that's saying a lot too, though.
Yeah.
He is the beloved son.
Yes. So Yakid in H3173, the word Yakid is only one, solitary, one, unique one. Okay, that's the Masoretic text for you. Very interesting, very prophetic. We will see why. On this verse, don't go ahead. Stay on the first verse. My wife has notes. She has some things on the first 2 verses. Ezzy, go ahead, share your question.
I wonder if there's any significance Yahuwah referring to Isaac as his only son, the same way that Yahuwah refers to Yahusha as his only son, when clearly there's Adam that was created and other creation.
I would say absolutely yes. It's very connected. Milo read ahead this week and took notes, so she's got tons of stuff. Does anybody want to share anything before Milo goes? All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, this chapter got me so excited this week. It is such a chapter of the gospel. So everything points to Messiah here. It's gonna be an amazing chapter. I was looking at the word, as you might like this, I was looking at the word try, where it says Yahuwah tries. Some say tested. Abraham in the Hebrew, and the word is nasa. Excuse me. Or at least the root word is nasa, which is noon. What is it? Noon, samek, and hay. And the noon is a seed, samek is a thorn, and hay is the man with the arms raised. And then like together, it could be meaning like an heir, protection, revealing things. So I just felt like Yahuwah was taking Abraham. This is literally what I wrote. Yahuwah took Abraham, his heir, and grabbed him and pulled him to Moriah to reveal something to him. That the seed, Messiah, which is noon, would be the ram with the thorns, which is Samek, the thicket, or aka the crown of thorns around his head, hung upon a tree with his arms stretched and pierced, which is the hay. And that this was going to be a trying time, directly pointing to Messiah and his salvation. And some of the cross references I got. Sorry, I'm a little slow this morning or this afternoon. Isaiah
Can we do a
53.
visual along with what you're saying, please? What letters you're saying? I have a chart.
You want me to go backwards?
Yeah, please share that again.
He wants to do a visual. The three words are noon. The three letters are noon. Nope, scroll down. Noon. See that seed? Like literally looks like sperm seed.
Okay.
And then you have Samek, which is the one right below it, represents thorns. And then the hay, which is further up, is a man with the arms stretched, which is the same hay that's used in Yod Hey Wahe or Yod Hey Wahe, however you say it, with the Yahuwah. But in Isaiah 53, 4-5, it says, surely he bore our diseases and took our pains, yet we consider him stricken, smitten by Elohim, and afflicted, but he was pierced for our transgressions, and he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought our peace was on him, and by his stripes we were healed. And also Matthew 27, verse 29, 29 says, sorry, can you get a Matthew 20? I don't know how to change this. Sorry, my phone's off. 27 verse 9. And it says, then that which was spoken through Yirmiyahu the prophet was fulfilled, saying, they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him upon whom a price has been set, whom, that's not 29, 27, 29, sorry. It says, they braided a crown of thorns and put it on his head and a reed in his right hand, and they kneeled down before him and mocked him, saying, hail, King of the Yahudim. And then Dardios mentioned the word Yahsi, this is the first time it appears. And it's interesting because it's at Mount Moriah. And I was looking into that. Moriah means chosen by Yah. And this was the same mount where the temple was built, interestingly enough. And that can be found in 2 Chronicles 3:1, which says, then Solomon began to build the house of Yahuwah at Jerusalem on Mount Uriah. So that is in Jerusalem. So here we have this. Oh, I didn't catch that. This type, this foreshadowing of the Messiah was at Jerusalem on Mount Moriah. And this is the same place that the temple was built, which is somewhere where Yahuwah placed his name at. So I just think the history behind this is so, what was getting to me, what was getting to me in this chapter was, Abraham is a father of faith. Like, he is a huge pivotal person for Hebrews. Like, he's a patriarch. He stands for so much. And to know that the same ground that he stood on, the same place where he built altar, the same place that he was about to sacrifice his son, and this is a foreshadowing of Yahusha, is the same place that the temple and all that the temple represents. And then there's aspects of where the temple is. Just so beautiful. This chapter has so many parallels, and definitely I could see this being one of those chapters where Yahusha expounds upon way more than I can, saying this completely points to me, completely points to salvation. So we'll see more as it goes along.
Okay, great. Awesome. Verse 3. Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled. Oh, let me end the share screen. Apologize. There we go. Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son. He split the wood for the burnt offering and rose up and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place far off. Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there. We will worship and come back to you. Interesting, the phrases here, we will worship, right? Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac, his son. He took in his hand the fire and the knife. They both went together. Milo.
I'm gonna just keep stopping because there's so much on here. And, yeah, sorry. In verses 3 to 5, I'm sorry, hang on some. I missed it. You brought this aspect of worship, and actually within the word Yahid, the only son or only begotten, the yod. I don't know if you want to go to it, but really quickly, the yod is a picture of an arm and closed hand, and some say that it represents this one. Yod represents worship. And I was getting from this that Abraham told his two fellow guys that not only were they going to go to worship, but they will come back. He didn't say I will come back. He said we will go and worship, and we will come and we'll come back. And to me, this was a picture of the resurrection, because Abraham was very fully aware of what Yahuwah had told him to do, which was go and sacrifice your son. But for him to say, we're going to come return to you, to me was a picture of, although my son is going to die, somehow there is going to be a part of resurrection. So again, all this to me represents Messiah, where in Yehukanan or John 11:25, Yahusha Yahusha said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will still live, even if he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Or in Mark 16, verse 6, he said to them, do not be amazed. You seek Yahusha the Nazarene, this is the messenger talking, who has been crucified. He has risen. He is not here. Look, the place where they put him. And then it goes on to talk about how, they need to go tell the disciples that Messiah has risen. Or in Luke 24, verses 6 to 7, says same thing. He's not here, but he has risen. Remember what he has told you. He was still in Galilee, saying that the Son of Man must be delivered up into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and the third day rise again. Or in First Peter, this is all from the aspect that he was asking me, where am I getting all this from? This is from the aspect of where Abraham was told that he had to go and sacrifice his son, but yet he tells his men, we're going to return to you. So he knows that he's supposed to kill his son. No, he knows that this isn't justice. He knows that he's supposed to go and sacrifice his son, but he still says we're going to come back. And then I was thinking about the resurrection. Messiah does actually die. He goes through the whole picture, and he comes back. Yeah. 1 Peter 3 says, blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Lord Yahusha Messiah, who according to his great mercy became our Father again to a living hope through the resurrection of Yahusha HaMashiach from the dead, to an incorruptible and undefiled inheritance that does not fade away, reserved for you in heaven. And then it goes on. Yep.
Excellent. I like it. We're going away and coming back. All right. Let's go to the end of 5, the last verse again. We will worship and come back to you. Verse 6. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac, almost like Yahusha carrying the cross. Hey, I'm not stealing nothing. No. Just because you wrote stuff ahead of time don't mean I ain't think about something. Yes, no, definitely. Isaac, definitely prophetic there, like Yahusha carrying that part of the cross at least. He took it in his hand, the fire and the knife. They both went together. Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and said, my father, he said, here I am, my son. He said, here is the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Okay. All right, Dad, I know we coming up here. You said we coming up here to, do a burnt offering. Where is the animal at? Abraham said, God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they both went together. Here's another prophetic thing here that there's a Old Testament only Israelites, Judaism, whatever you want to call it. They don't believe that metaphorically that any human could be like a lamb, but here's the first time before the law of Moses. Here Abraham is speaking these words, and you can wiggle your way out of this and say whatever you want. You could say Abraham knew that Yah wasn't going to let him sacrifice his own son, and he was going to prepare a literal lamb, or Abraham was metaphorically speaking that it's not impossible for somebody to lay down their life and to be considered a lamb. It's prophetic of the Messiah, absolutely, being the Lamb of God. Jeff.
On what you were just saying about it being prophetic about Messiah, I think it's beautiful what's happening here because of the gospel and how Yah already knows what's going to happen. And he just wants to see if this person he's made promises to would do the same for him. And it's like so mutually, it's beautiful. It's a loving relationship.
Amen.
I like that.
Yeah. Yahuwah knows what's going to happen. He knows the future. He knows the plan. He's revealing. We're only in verse 8, and we already see how he's revealing his plan to Abraham. I mean, even with the word test, Yahuwah tested Abraham. It wasn't only a test, it was a revelation. Yahuwah was giving Abraham a revelation. That word test had the whole sacrifice and crucifixion written all over it, those 3 words. Right? The seed,
I got you.
which is Yahusha. My wife was showing us the word, which is a seed, the first letter. The second letter was thorns. And the third letter was a person, a picture of a person beholding. So here, it's all being revealed. Derail, go ahead.
Can you read verse 8 again? What version you read?
Verse 8, the web.
Okay.
Which is from the Masoretic text. Abraham said, God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son.
Okay, it's the same. But I don't know, maybe I'm looking too much into it where it says God will provide himself. That's a oneness, in my opinion. Or we already talking about that. I'm just late.
God will provide himself the lamb. Nice. He prepares himself for himself. Yeah. I mean, because technically that's what we believe that.
That's what he did. That's what I'm saying. God and Abraham saying that God will provide who? Himself.
People won't see it that way. Obviously, grammatically, they'll say we're looking at that wrong, but prophetically,
right.
We're definitely looking at that correctly.
Well, in my
Yahuwah
opinion, he
will
ain't the
do the
author of
job.
confusion. That's what I see.
Yahuwah will do the job. Yahuwah will do the sacrifice. Yahuwah will be the sacrifice. He will do it because nobody else can do it.
Right.
Nobody else can do it perfectly. So I'm gonna let y'all do it yourselves for a while to see your frailty and your imperfection and your limit, your limit, right? Your limitation. And then
Right.
I'm gonna come at some point and show you how it's done.
The perfect sacrifice.
Yep, perfect sacrifice, sinless. All right. Verse 9. I love that. Yahuwah prepares himself for himself. I love it. Why not? He was all by himself before he created us. He don't need us. He was perfectly fine all by himself.
I had a scripture reference before we go to the next verse.
Okay, go ahead.
Just about the comment that you made about revealing his plans to Abraham.
Yes.
In the previous chapters or earlier chapters in 18, when he was, before he was discussing the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah, it says in verse 17, and Yahuwah said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Since Abraham is certainly going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. So I mean, I think from the time that they visited him, the messengers and Yahuwah himself, he's been revealing his plans to Abraham. I mean, there's scriptural proof right there.
Amen. Absolutely. Was it Galatians that Shaul was also quoting from this situation, saying that in his seed, not many, but one, right? I think that's Galatians. All right, verse 9.
And he's a prophet. Oh.
Go ahead.
And we found that Abraham is a prophet because remember when his wife was captured into Abimelech's household, and Yahuwah is talking to him through a dream. He's like, I will have Abraham pray for you. He's a prophet. And so the things that Abraham does and says is not just for that then and now. It is prophetic. Like he has that role, that prophetic role, and he himself is a type. So it's so beautiful when you see all this, and then you see how it points to Messiah, because that's the whole game plan. That's the whole big picture of, okay, we're longing for Messiah. Right now he's a foreigner in a land, but he's living as a stranger in that land, and yet that land is a promise. So a lot of good stuff in here.
Oh,
Hallelujah. I
love it.
take that.
Love it. Jerusalem. It's on the mountain that's in Jerusalem, Mount Moriah, chosen by
Teresa
Yah.
says,
It's got the
good answer.
picture of the sun, Yahuwah providing for himself. I mean, it's the gospel written all over it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, verse 9. Right? 9. They came to the place which God had told him of. Abraham built the altar there, and Abraham's a prophet. Thank you for that point, by the way. That's important. Sometimes I'll be honest. I used to think of Abraham as he was just a forefather. He was just Yahuwah chose him for the covenants, and he's just the father of our faith. But I never really thought that in my mind. I never thought of him as a prophet. So that's really important. So that should make us even go deeper in understanding that the story of Abraham, expect to see things within his life and with things that the Messiah tells him to be something that is for the future if he's a prophet. All right, we can expect that. So it's not far-fetched, okay? They came to the place which God had told him of in verse 9. Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order, bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar, on the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to kill his son.
You had mentioned earlier in regards to when it says that Abraham placed the wood on for Isaac to carry, and I wanted to give the cross reference for that as in Messiah. And Yehukanan John, when I say Yehukanan, I'm talking about John. So Yehukanan 19:16, it says, so then he delivered him to them to be crucified. So they took Yahusha, and he went out carrying the cross himself to the place called the place of a skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha. Just another picture cross reference.
Yep. Good old Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17 reminds us of this story. Hebrews 11:17. By faith, Abraham, being tested, offered up Isaac. Yes, he who had gladly received the promises was offering up his one and only son. There goes that term again, one and only son. Yahuwah has many sons, but he calls Yahusha his one and only son because it is as if he's the only son, or he's the only one of a certain inheritance and a certain promise, being the one to be the Messiah, the one to sit on David's throne, to rule and reign in the order of Melchizedek, things like that. One and only son. Or having preeminence, right? Like another example would be, no, I'm going ahead a little bit, but Jacob. Jacob and how he took Esau's, birthright. Even though Jacob wasn't the firstborn son, Esau was the firstborn son, but Jacob ended up taking that birthright, and it's as if he's the firstborn, because not because of his order of birth, but because of his, I don't know how to say it, prophetic current role or inheritance, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the phrase, but I can't think of it right now. But
if you look at the example of Abraham and Sarah and Hagar, when two become one, it's bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. You know, they join as one. Talking about Abraham and Sarah. So the child that they have together is literally bone of their bone, flesh of their flesh. This union, this covenant that they have together. But if you look at the role of Hagar, she had a certain purpose to fulfill, but it's not the same type of covenant that Abraham and Sarai have. And I think it's the same situation with even, you know, the prodigal son with Jacob and Isaac and that whole situation, just like with, you know, in the same sense with Yahusha being the character and the makeup of who Yahuwah is, being his son versus creation. That's how I see it.
Amen. Yep. Yeah. So I mentioned Hebrews 11:17. By faith, Abraham, you know, was offering up his son. But also in James chapter 2, verse 21, it talks about, wasn't Abraham our father justified by works? So here is another I just want to give a promotion of faith and works working together in the New Testament. Is not rocket science. You know, many religions, certain Christians will preach to you that it's only faith. We only need to have faith. It's all just faith. We don't need to do any works. We're not justified by works at all in any way, shape, or form. That is a lie. The New Testament, the whole scriptures, all the scripture from, Genesis all the way to Malachi, and the New Testament, or the renewed testament from Matthew to Revelation, is filled with faith combined with works. And here's a perfect example. In Hebrews, it says that by faith, Abraham offered his son. But in James 2:21, it says, Abraham, our father, was justified by works in that he offered up Isaac, his son, on the altar. So Abraham offering up Isaac was both by faith and by works. Okay? It was a work of faith. How's that? Does that sound good? A work of faith. All right. So how does that translate to us? Let's do the same. I mean, if we're going to obey Yahuwah in a particular work or commandment or instruction or a physical deed of any sort, let's make sure that we're doing it in good faith towards him, as if it's for him first, right? That's how we prevent ourselves from messing that up. You know, once we start doing it for other motives, other reasons, and Yahuwah is not first, and then to love our neighbor, once that starts to get messed up, if we're doing it solely because we love our neighbor and not really doing it for Yahuwah, and we're starting to lose the priorities. Verse 10. Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. Verse 11. Yahuwah's messenger, or Yahuwah's angel, called to him out of the sky and said, Abraham, Abraham. He said, here I am. He said, don't lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. I'm pausing because I want you guys to think about what I just read. Go ahead, D-Rail.
That's Yahuwah speaking? Because that sounds like
something's going on here, right? Sounds like there's a little change of roles, but it's still the same person, kind of not the same, but the same at the same time. Doesn't it sound something like that?
Yeah, and the Septuagint really does.
Mm-hmm. Read the Septuagint for me. Start at verse 11.
Yep. And an angel of the Lord called him out of heaven and said, Abram, Abram. And he said, behold, I am here. And he said, lay not thine hand upon the child, neither do anything to him. For now I know that thou fearest God, and for my sake thou hast not spared thy beloved son.
For my sake.
Goosebumps.
Hello, where in this chapter was an angel the one telling Abraham to go sacrifice this child? I missed that part. Did I miss it? No, it says, verse 1, after these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, he said, here I am, right?
Yep.
Take your only son, right? Offer him there, burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell you of. See, you
He
can't
said
really
Abram.
get this revelation with the
Said his name
Septuagint.
twice too.
You can't get this very much with the Septuagint because the Septuagint doesn't show us the Father's name, Yahuwah, right? So it can kind of
true.
blend as being this was an angel the whole time. This was a God. This was an Elohim, right? This is where the Septuagint doesn't give us that. But when you're dealing with the Masoretic, where it's putting the Father's name, Yahuwah, in certain places, you can't, there's no wiggle room. Yahuwah and the messenger are both the same person. Yahuwah is in disguise as the messenger, as the angel.
Yahusha.
No, I don't think it's an ambassador speaking on behalf of Yahuwah. Nah, I'm not taking it that way.
Yahusha.
That's what they would teach you in Christian theology school, though. They'll teach you that this is messenger speaking on behalf of Yahuwah, as if he is Yahuwah. No. Where were we? 11 and 12, right? Yeah. Don't lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, right? As if it's another person other than the messenger himself. But then he says, since you have not withheld your son, only son, from me. That's just right in that verse. There's either a contradiction or a revelation. I'm going to say that again. There's either a contradiction or a revelation in this verse. And if you didn't catch it, pray on it and try again next time. Verse 13. Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked and saw that behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. You have anything? All right. I just want to see something real quick. The word ram here, it's ram twice. H352. Yep, ram. Pillar, doorpost, jams, strongman, leader, chief, mighty tree, terebinth. Interesting. All right, just double checking. And then one more verse, and Milo will share something. Verse 14.
Door.
Oh, I see some hands up. My apologies. Let's go with Joshua and then Ezzy. Unmute yourself, Joshua.
So looking at this Genesis 22:12 in the interlinear, thine son from me is H3173, and it looks like for me is not even in there.
For 12.
Yeah, verse 12.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. The last word is mimmeni. H4480. From, out of, on account of. So according to an interlinear scripture, it doesn't say for me or from me. That's here. I would have to look at different interlinear scriptures. Let's see, the ISR. The ISR says from me. Yeah. King James, obviously from me. So yeah, okay. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Something to look into. The Septuagint. What does the Septuagint say? Yeah, thy beloved son, right? It doesn't have from me either.
What verse 12? Beloved
Yeah.
son.
Right?
Yeah, beloved son.
So Septuagint says, he said, lay not thy hand upon the child, neither do anything to him, for now I know that thou fearest God, and for my sake, I think regardless, it says for my sake there,
Yeah, there's that in
right?
there.
I think so, even if at the end, it doesn't say for me, but it says that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Oh, that's where it's at. Okay, and let me go back to the Hebrew interlinear, because it's probably in a different spot, not at the end. Let me go back to verse 12 in the interlinear. So I'm going to try my best here. It says, and he said, not lay thy hand upon the lad, nay, do thou neither anything, for now I know unto him, for thou fearest God, you hast not withheld something. I'm trying my best going right to left here with the interlinear. Thy son, thy only. Yeah, I'm not sure. It does. I can't see it in the interlinear, but I do see it in the Septuagint, which again, the Septuagint, the history of the Septuagint is that this is the Greek Old Testament, which predates the Masoretic text by almost 1,000 years. Okay. The Septuagint supposedly was put together before the Messiah was even born on the earth as a man. Okay. There was a Greek version of the Old Testament in existence before the Messiah was even born. So something to consider. So the Septuagint even has it, you know. But now I know that thou fears God, and for my sake, right? The word my sake is there. And then the Masoretic text. I would like to see this verse in a Jewish kind of Old Testament translation, whatever translations they use. I would like to see what there says. If anybody finds anything, let me know. But thanks for bringing that up, Joshua, making us look twice, checking twice. Ezzy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that reading this messenger, what this messenger is saying about, not laying a hand on the boy nor touching him, and this ram being provided, it makes me think of how we, our forefathers or the people of that time sacrificed Yahusha. They were so, despite the fact that, that he's saying all these prophetic words, and he's, doing all these miraculous things and showing that he's definitely the son of the Almighty, and yet we still touched him and put our hands on him and sacrificed him, versus following after what Abraham did and not being able, being stopped, and still having the faith and the belief, to sacrifice his son. But no father wants to sacrifice his son, and he still was eager to do that, or willing to do that. But this messenger stopping him from sacrificing his son, obviously because he saw his heart. But yet we didn't have, or not we, but the people of that time, when Yahusha is walking amongst them and doing all these miraculous things, didn't even think, to themselves to not sacrifice him. It wasn't until after the fact. And I just wonder, what life would be like if we would have had the same heart of Abraham, realizing that we don't need to sacrifice, this innocent lamb. I mean, it all works out for, the purpose of Yah's plan, but just seeing how this is playing out prophetically, how different it would have played out had, the people of that time seen that this is truly the father's son, and you don't want to shed blood on an innocent lamb. So that was just something that stood out to me, how we actually are the ones who pierced Messiah. Even though we talk about how the lamb was provided, Yahuwah provided the lamb, ultimately it's innocent blood on the hands of the people, when it didn't have to be that way.
Thank you for sharing, Ezzy. Let's do two more. I don't have a response. Do you have a response to that? Okay, Milo has a response to that, Ezzy.
Yeah, I'll definitely say I get what you're saying, but I will say it had to be done, because if if they didn't sacrifice him, then we would have no atonement. So that lamb had to be sacrificed in that fulfillment because of all the sin that had already come up from Israel. That would have been different if this was before the divorce and everything like that. But because it was after, that was definitely needed. So I'm grateful that Yahuwah didn't stop. He didn't, that it was fulfilled. And there are a few points in this. Did you want it to stop at a certain point? Because I have from 11 to 14 some things.
I want to stop this video soon.
Okay, so I'll shorten this. This is gonna be okay.
You got a lot?
Whatever. No, you just let me know when to go.
All right.
Because I have quite a few things on this.
All right, I want to stop this video soon just to not make it too long. Verse 13, Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked and saw that behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. I'm going to stop the video here. Genesis 22, verses 1 to 13.